Welcome to Pulse of the Planet. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In June 2025, the United States Supreme Court handed down a landmark decision that would reverberate far beyond the walls of the courtroom. The justices struck down key elements of President Trump's aggressive tariff policy, a move that immediately captured the world's attention. This wasn't just a routine legal matter, it was a pivotal moment that challenged the very foundation of America's approach to global trade. The ruling called into question years of economic strategy and set the stage for a dramatic shift in how the U.S. interacts with its trading partners. The decision sent shockwaves through the global economy, triggering immediate reactions in financial markets from New York to Tokyo. Stock prices tumbled, currencies fluctuated, and investors scrambled to reassess their strategies. For many, the ruling signaled uncertainty, but for others, it offered a glimmer of hope that stability might return to international commerce. This was far more than a legal debate among scholars or politicians. The Supreme Court's decision had real-world consequences, directly impacting global trade flows, international alliances, and the economic prospects of American families and businesses. From the ports where cargo ships dock to the grocery stores where families shop, the effects rippled through every layer of the economy. For years, the world watched as the United States embraced a more protectionist stance, imposing tariffs and challenging long-standing trade agreements. This ruling, however, marked a dramatic course correction. It was a signal to the world that the U.S. might be ready to re-engage with its allies and trading partners on more predictable terms. The Supreme Court's decision reasserted Congress's constitutional authority over trade policy, a power that had gradually shifted toward the executive branch in recent years. By restoring this balance, the ruling offered hope for a return to a more stable, rules-based system, one where laws, not executive orders, guide America's economic relationships. For American companies, especially manufacturers and small businesses, the decision promised relief from the uncertainty and retaliatory measures that had become all too common. Many business owners had struggled to plan for the future, unsure of what new tariffs or trade barriers might appear next. Now, there was hope for a more predictable environment. To truly grasp the weight of this decision, we need to look at its impact on everyday life. It affects everything from the global supply chains that keep store shelves stocked, to the price of groceries and goods that families rely on. The ruling could mean lower costs for consumers, more stable jobs for workers, and renewed confidence for businesses navigating a complex global market. Ultimately, this Supreme Court decision marks a pivotal moment in America's economic relationship with the world. It's a turning point that could reshape not only U.S. trade policy, but also the global economic order for years to come. The tariffs at the heart of the 2025 Supreme Court case trace their origins back to the earliest days of Donald Trump's presidency. When Trump took office in 2017, he made it clear that reshaping America's trade relationships would be a top priority. He argued that decades of trade deals had left American workers behind and that bold action was needed to restore U.S. manufacturing and protect national interests. From 2017 to 2021, his administration imposed steep tariffs on steel, aluminum, and a wide range of Chinese goods, citing both national security concerns and what he called unfair trade practices by foreign competitors. These tariffs sparked a heated trade war with China, leading to retaliatory measures and global economic uncertainty. Supporters claimed the tariffs were necessary to level the playing field and revive American industry, while critics warned of rising costs for businesses and consumers. After his re-election in 2024, Trump doubled down on his approach, announcing a sweeping 10% tariff on nearly all imports into the United States. This time, he invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, a law originally designed to address threats like terrorism or hostile foreign governments, not to overhaul the entire U.S. trade system. The move was unprecedented and it sent shockwaves through global markets and diplomatic circles. The Trump administration justified the sweeping tariffs by declaring that persistent trade deficits and the flow of illegal drugs across borders constituted national emergencies. Officials argued that these issues threatened the country's economic security and public safety, and that extraordinary measures were required to address them. However, legal experts and policy analysts quickly pushed back. They argued that IEPA was never intended to be used as a tool for broad-based tariffs or to fundamentally reshape U.S. trade policy. Instead, it was meant for targeted sanctions against specific threats. Critics warned that using IEPA in this way set a dangerous precedent and risked undermining the balance of power between Congress and the president. The aggressive tariff strategy deeply polarized the nation. Some American manufacturers and factory workers celebrated, believing the tariffs would protect their jobs and industries. But importers, farmers, and consumer groups sounded the alarm, warning that higher costs, supply chain disruptions, and the risk of global retaliation could hurt the broader economy. Across the country, protests and heated debates erupted as the impact of the tariffs rippled through communities. With the nation divided and the stakes higher than ever, the conflict over Trump's tariff strategy set the stage for a dramatic legal showdown at the Supreme Court, a case that would test the limits of presidential power and the future of American trade policy. The moment the new tariffs were announced, legal challenges erupted across the country. Within hours, lawyers representing a wide range of interests, states, businesses, and advocacy groups began preparing lawsuits. The atmosphere outside courthouses was tense, with protesters voicing their concerns about the sweeping economic impact these tariffs could have on American industries and consumers alike. State attorneys general, joined by powerful business coalitions, quickly filed suit. Their argument was clear: the president, in their view, had overstepped the legal boundaries of his office. They contended that the authority to impose such broad tariffs rested with Congress, not the executive branch, and that the president's use of emergency powers was an unprecedented expansion of executive authority. In May 2025, after weeks of intense legal arguments and national debate, the U.S. Court of International Trade issued a landmark ruling. The court declared that invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEPA, to justify such sweeping tariffs was unlawful. The judges emphasized that Congress had never intended IEPA to be used as a tool for broad economic protectionism, but rather for targeted national security threats. This decision was soon echoed by a federal district court in Washington, D.C., which reinforced the view that the president's actions had exceeded the limits set by law. The courts, in effect, were drawing a line in the sand, reaffirming the constitutional separation of powers. Despite these setbacks, the Trump administration acted swiftly. Government lawyers requested and were granted an emergency stay. This legal maneuver allowed the tariffs to remain in effect while the appeals process played out, keeping the economic and political stakes high. Recognizing the profound national implications, the Supreme Court agreed to take up the case on an expedited schedule. The eyes of the nation turned to the highest court, as both sides prepared for a legal battle that would shape the future of presidential power and economic policy. At the heart of the case was a fundamental constitutional question: could the president, acting alone, impose tariffs under emergency powers, or did that authority belong exclusively to Congress? The answer would have far-reaching consequences for the balance of power in American government. As the justices took their seats and the nation watched, the stage was set for a historic Supreme Court showdown, one that would test the limits of executive authority and redefine the boundaries of American democracy. In a 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court ruled that the president overstepped by using IEPA to impose broad tariffs. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that the Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to regulate foreign commerce and impose tariffs. IEPA, the court said, was meant for targeted responses to specific threats, not for rewriting trade policy. The majority found the administration's tariffs too broad and untethered from the emergencies cited. The dissent argued for more executive flexibility, but the majority set a clear precedent. The president cannot unilaterally impose sweeping tariffs without explicit congressional approval. The Supreme Court's decision immediately invalidated over $350 billion in tariffs, including the global 10% tax and fentanyl-related levies. Government agencies scrambled to unwind the tariffs, halting collections and setting up refund procedures for importers. The White House, though disagreeing, pledged to comply while seeking new trade strategies with Congress. Markets surged on the news, with stocks rising as businesses anticipated lower costs and reduced inflation. However, domestic steel and aluminum producers warned of renewed foreign competition and potential job losses. The ruling highlighted the complex reality tariffs protect some industries, but often at a broader economic cost. The nation now faced a new uncertain trade landscape. For consumers, the end of the tariffs means lower prices on everything from electronics to groceries, easing inflation. Businesses reliant on imports welcomed the relief, expecting higher profits and more hiring. Farmers and exporters anticipated the lifting of foreign retaliatory tariffs, opening markets abroad. However, industries once shielded by tariffs, like steel, now face tough competition and possible layoffs. Economists predict a net positive effect on jobs, but acknowledge the transition will be painful for some. The ruling shifts the U.S. toward a more open economy, with gains for many, but uncertainty for a few. Trade policy, it turns out, shapes everyday life in ways most Americans feel directly. The Supreme Court's ruling drew strong reactions nationwide. Business groups and manufacturers praised the return to stability and predictability. Retail, tech, and auto leaders welcomed relief from rising costs. Politically, the decision split along party lines. State attorneys general who led the challenge called it a win for the rule of law, while the White House vowed to pursue its trade agenda through Congress. Experts hailed the ruling as a historic rebalancing of trade policy, emphasizing congressional oversight. Farmers hoped for renewed exports while steelworkers feared for their jobs. The ruling's real-world impact was clear. It created winners and losers, reshaping communities and industries across the country. With the president's unilateral tariff power curtailed, trade policy now moves to Congress. Tariffs aren't banned, but broad, long-term duties require congressional approval. The White House plans to pursue its agenda through legislation, but faces a divided Congress and tough negotiations. Protectionists may seek new tariff powers for the president, while free traders push for openness. Congressional hearings and debates will shape the future of U.S. trade law. Internationally, the ruling opens doors for renewed diplomacy and trade talks. The next chapter will be written by lawmakers, with profound effects on prices, jobs, and America's global role. The 2025 Supreme Court ruling is a powerful lesson in American governance. It reaffirms checks and balances, making clear that even in global economic crises, presidential power has limits. The authority to impose tariffs and taxes belongs to Congress, the branch closest to the people. The case shows that citizens, through their representatives and legal challenges, can hold government accountable. The ruling is more than a verdict on trade. It's a reaffirmation of the rule of law and the resilience of American institutions. As the nation faces future challenges, this decision ensures that major policy shifts require debate, consensus, and constitutional legitimacy.